We begin the show with a major story today making waves across Nigeria as the chieftain of the All Progressive Congress, Bola Tinubu, has formally given a public indication of his decision to seek the ticket of his party to contest the 2023 presidential election. After a meeting with President Buhari at the presidential villa, Tinubu told newsmen that he has informed President Muhammadu Buhari of his intention to seek the APC presidential ticket.
I've informed the president of my intention, but I've not informed the Nigerians yet. I'm still consulting, and I have no problem consulting, and I've not set a parameter of limitation to the extent of how many people will I consult. You will soon hear, all you want to hear is a categorical declaration. You've gotten that truth from me that I've informed Mr. President of my ambition. And you don't expect more answers than that. That's our business. He's a Democrat. He didn't ask me to stop. He didn't ask me not to attempt and pursue my ambition. It's a lifelong ambition. So, why do I expect him to say more than that? Why do you? You are running a democratic dispensation, and you must adopt the principle and the values and the virtues of democracy. That's it. I don't want to discuss individuals now. I must discuss myself. I have the confidence, the vision, the capacity to build on the foundation of Mr. President and turn Nigeria better. I've done that with commitment and unyielding, in Lagos State. You've seen that experience and the capacity to turn things around, and that is what we are doing. The confusion, the drift of the past in PDP is being corrected, and you can't, take away from that, as we are today. Go back to the data on how many barrels of oil were we producing when we first came in, what it is today. We cannot, even at the time we came in, we did not pay the counterpart fund to start our rail line. Today, you enjoy the comfort of having rail from Lagos to Ibadan. You have the Kaduna, and you have the one for Kano still on the aggressive pipeline. You see excellent infrastructure. I just come from Azare, and I've seen good roads. The carnage of dying on motor vehicles is reducing, except, lack of compliance with a lot of Nigerian drivers and VIOs. So, let us think back. Let us be intellectually inquisitive as to the past and the present and what the future holds for Nigeria. You want my manifesto now? Not yet.
Okay, Tunde, your take on this.
Well, it's hardly earth-shattering, is it? It's been in the offing for a while, but now we can actually discuss it officially, now that Asiwaju Bola Tinubu has declared his intention to President Buhari, but he did say he hasn't declared it to Nigerians. But what I found very interesting about it is when he talked about what he brings to the table. In general terms, of course, I'm sure we'll get into specifics later, but he talked about his confidence, his capacity, his vision, and then he also alluded to his track record. You know, all of these things are really important. We do need visionary leaders. We do need people with a track record. You really can't just come out of the clear blue sky and think you're going to run a country as complex as this. We do need people that have the confidence to throw their hats in the ring. All that is all well and good. But you'll notice that reactions to this declaration have been, you know, pretty swift. Some have been favorable and some less so. Some of the unfavorable reactions are also pointing to his track record. So there are questions there, depending on what side of the divide that you're on. You could really, you know, tout his accomplishments as governor of Lagos, his ability to pick, you know, an A team. But other people have their criticisms as well, which I'm sure he'll have to address at some point. And I just think that also, back to the track record, he is one of those who was instrumental in bringing the APC to where they are now. However, President Buhari himself has said that if rifts within the party are not properly managed, that leaves an opening to the PDP. So I wonder how all that's going to be addressed. But he's, you know, well within his rights to contest, as any of us are, well, constitutionally. And the rest remains to be seen. We have a guest coming on later to discuss this.
Dr. Batu?
Well, the first thing I think is that what Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has done is to clear the uncertainty with regard to his long-advertised presidential ambition. Now we know. He says, well, he has told the president formally and that he's here to do a public declaration. There's no difference. The story is everywhere. So it's as public as it can get. And I think that, you know, in terms of timing, in terms of strategy, he has tried to also outpace others. I mean, look at it. Best location to declare yourself a presidential aspirant, right in the premises of the presidential villa itself, in the presence of the State House press corps, knowing that, you know, so many media houses are represented there, and the story will go everywhere. So I think from the point of view of timing, setting, strategy, that was a very clever move. So whether it's to the president or it's to the public, we now know. So that uncertainty is out of the way. And then, of course, there are many groups out there, the Asiwaju Progressive Solidarity Group, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu for President groups. So many of them out there. They've been at it for almost about 6 months now. Now, this will also give them confidence to continue with their advocacy. The third point is that, look, we've been criticizing a lot of people who say they are interested in the presidency, and they will come around and say, oh, it's people that are pushing me. People say I should come and lead. At least in his own case, he has summoned the confidence to come and say, look, I want to lead Nigeria. I don't want to be characterized like a role player in Nollywood movies. You know, in Nollywood movies, once they cast you as a houseboy, if you are not careful, you will remain a houseboy forever. If they cast you as a chief, they will put you in the position of chief. It's called, you know, stereotyping. But he says, yeah, typecasting, stereotyping. But he is now saying that, look, if you call him a kingmaker, that is your own kind of perception. But that there's nothing that says a kingmaker cannot also be king, except you kill him off. And that this time around, he wants the crown himself. Well, it is left for members of his party to decide whether he deserves a crown at the level of the primaries, and for Nigerians, if he crosses the party order, to also decide whether he deserves to be president of Nigeria. He has told us he has the ambition, he has the strength, he has the experience, he has the clarity of vision and all of that. Well, it is for us to assess him in terms of specific things that he wants to do for Nigerians, if he's able to get his party's ticket. As at the moment, 1 year to the election, I think it's also most strange that many of the would-be aspirants have not come forward. Only a few of them. Yesterday, Redele Momodu disclosed his interest on this program. Before then, Kingsley Moghalu. Before then, we had Dr. Donyi Okukwe, and there must be a couple of others. Pius Ayim, former Senate President, former Secretary to the Government of the Federation. But whoever wants to be president should come forward so that we can have, the conversation can start, and we can begin to assess each individual on their merit. And I hope nobody will have a sense of entitlement when it comes to the position of President of Nigeria. Finally, to respond to your point about how people have reacted to the declaration by Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I think the most notable is the report that the spokesperson of Ohaneze Ndigbo, Chief Alex Ogbonia, I hope my pronunciation is correct, has said that, look, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is going against convention, and that his declaration goes against the grain of fairness and justice, because in his own consideration, he expected that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu will support the Southeast agenda and throw his weight behind the Southeast emerging as president. But, as has been pointed out variously, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a citizen. He has the right to aspire. He has the right to say he too wants to be president. The Southeast can bring forward, their own candidates can step forward. We already have Ayim, we have Kingsley Moghalu, and then let the Nigerian people decide and choose the best man for the job.
Chief Ohamboa?
Chief who? Oh, okay. Yes, Mr. Ohamboa. Yes, Mao Ohamboa.
All right, let the games begin. That's all I have to say. Good morning. Thanks again. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break. Afterwards, we'll have Rotus and Michael and Adesu and Aaron to give us updates on Africa, global business, and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. For updates on sports stories across the globe, Aaron Akerjada joins us.
A very good morning to you, Tundu.
Morning.
Good morning to you, Rafai. Good morning to you, Doctor.
Aaron the Baron.
Yes, it's good to be here.
The Baroness.
She's doing good.
The honeymoon, you enjoy the honeymoon?
Yes, of course, I loved it.
Fresh.
Yeah. As expected. As expected.
Your friend now is enjoying the delicacies from the kitchen. He's been well taken care of. See how he looks.
You know what they say after the advert of every Nigerian movie? They say coming soon. My next.
We are waiting.
I danced in his wedding and the MC had to come and meet me. That guy, is it your wedding?
I just really like this new accessory, I have to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
We are beginning to see
on your finger
the
there.
special touch.
Yes.
Baroness, thank you.
So let's get it started. Of course, we know that the Nations Cup is up and running, but Nigeria's campaign begins today. And a lot is expected from the Super Eagles of Nigeria, three-time winners of this particular competition. Yesterday, the players had a feel of the stadium, the Ronde Adidja Stadium in Gouda, north of Cameroon. And a lot is expected from the Super Eagles. It doesn't get any better. It's a blockbuster fixture today. Nigeria against Egypt. Egypt, 7-time winners. They boast of some of the best talents in Africa as a whole. They are the most convincing team going into this tournament and one of the favorites to actually win it. So the Super Eagles do have their work cut out for them. Augustus Cerezo Guavon knows that today his tactical and technical ilk will be put to the test. As a matter of fact, there was some sort of inspiration on the sidelines yesterday as former African Footballer of the Year, former assistant coach of the Super Eagles, and a man that everyone loves so much, Emmanuel Amonike, was there at the stadium yesterday to give the coach a little bit of support, moral support, and actually speak to the coaching staff and just he spoke to the boys because he's been here, he's dominated Africa as a player, he has gone to do great things, he's still coaching as we speak, and a lot is expected from the Super Eagles, but with inspirations like this, let's see how it actually goes. Now it's down to the players. This is where the rubber meets the road. The players know that they need to deliver. We know that we are missing some marquee players in the likes of Victor Osimhen, not forgetting also Odio Judigalo, who was hoping to be at this tournament. Unfortunately, that did not happen. So a lot is expected from the Super Eagles today. Later on this afternoon, we'll be there to cover this particular this tournament and this match for Arise News. But I must say that I'm hoping that a miracle happens because the balance of scale favors the Pharaohs of Egypt in this particular fixture. Looking at other fixtures, the Nations Cup hasn't really set the world alight, and goals have been few and far between. As you can actually see, almost all the games that have been played in this tournament, 6 games played, only two have a 2-1 score line. Most of them have been 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. Some are saying that, well, the Nations Cup is always a slow burner. We always start very poorly and actually pick up pace. 1.33 goals scored so far in this particular competition. Senegal actually leaving it late yesterday. Morocco beating Ghana, which was the biggest fixture yesterday. And you can actually see there Gabon topping that particular group with Aubameyang stay out with COVID-19. So when he returns to the side, there will be a stronger feat. Now leaving out Morocco that has grown in leaps and bounds when it comes to football. Who would have thought that Ghana would be bottom of that particular group? Now, moving on to the other groups, and Guinea yesterday did their business early and got the goal. Keita very instrumental for them. Senegal with the flurry of stars, another team people are tipping to actually win this particular tournament, did not show anything of such nature, did not deliver on the day, but they got the needed goal and they got the 3 points that were needed. Malawi, Zimbabwe left begging as we speak. So a lot is expected from this Africa Cup of Nations, and without a doubt, no one looks past Nigeria because Nigeria always gets into the Final Four, one way or the other. So we're expecting the Super Eagles to actually pull some strings. Before I open the floor to you, we cannot just talk about sports without mentioning the Novak Djokovic visa debacle and all that has happened. We know that this morning, as at 20 minutes ago, he was at the Melbourne court training and actually just getting himself all worked up and getting himself into the groove and into the strides as he prepares for the Australian Open. But questions are still being asked about him and what he had actually done in time past. Some had called him a freedom fighter. Some have questioned that if he cannot answer for what he did between the 16th and the 17th after testing positive to COVID-19, going out to party with people without wearing a face mask, if he cannot defend that, then he's a big hypocrite. Some are claiming at the moment it's still here and there. The Australian authorities are still looking at every fine details, and there are still talks that they might still revoke his visa as we speak to you. And let's see how he actually goes. But more importantly is the fact that sponsors, he has quite a flurry of sponsors. Some of the biggest are Lacoste and Hublot, and they are very wary, and right now they are watching and studying the situation because sponsors most of the time don't like to probably deal with stars that are embroiled in controversies. We know his deal with Lacoste is very, very rich. 9.4 million every single year on year. That's how much is being paid. And of course, the Hublot deal is not disclosed. At the moment, they are thinking of pulling out if this debacle does not come to an end. Will Novak Djokovic play in Melbourne? Is left to be seen. It is, at the moment, it has divided opinions, literally, in the tennis world, with the ATP saying that, looking at it, it is bad all round, from the side of tennis, Australia, and the player himself.
And the whole world, quite frankly.
It's
Everybody's
really
taking quite a strong position.
Yeah.
But what surprises me the most is the kind of support that he's getting. There's so many anti-vaxxers. That movement is actually very strong. And this is why I'm sure the sponsors have not sort of jumped ship as a knee-jerk reaction to this kind of a mess, because he does have an enormous amount of support, which is surprising considering his behavior has been less than ideal, I have to say. I mean, I'm a fan of Djokovic, I still am, and I'm going to separate this from his performance on court. But if we're looking at him as a person, like you've said, some of his behavior does seem reckless because, you know, he's had that experience when he organized the tournament, you recall. They had an after party in a nightclub, they all got COVID. So he should have been a lot more careful when he was tested, instead of like going around hugging people, taking pictures and all of that. Yeah, it does seem really irresponsible. And then there's also obviously his right to remain unvaccinated. If you don't want to be vaccinated, then you have to just really stay at home, quite frankly. You can't have your cake and eat it. It's
no, but
very
Tennis
messy.
Australia are very insistent on having Djokovic play this tournament. And that is, I think,
at the expense of other people.
Yes,
at the expense
and that's
of
where,
policy.
I think that's the origin of this problem, because
the
they decided
rules
to,
and the exceptions.
they decided to move the goalposts.
Yes.
And that's where everything just
but
went
I want to
awry.
put you on the spot, Aaron.
Yeah.
Nigeria and Egypt today, win, lose or draw. What's your prediction?
I think a draw will suffice today. If we get a draw from this particular fixture, it's huge. It's huge. Egypt, I know Minos. Egypt always want to go for blood. They are the most successful team in Africa. and rightfully so, they still have one of the best players right now in the world, in the person of Mohamed Salah. We need to be careful.
Well, Aaron, is it really Nigeria versus Egypt or the Super Eagles versus Mohamed Salah? But we'll see how he plays out.
Let's see how he plays out today.
I mean, the level of confidence that our players have demonstrated, I think it's encouraging. And perhaps, as you have predicted, we'll be lucky to get a draw because that Egyptian team is a very strong team. But we also, our lineup is not so bad, even with the absence of Osimhen, Onuachu, and others. But, you've put a lot of faith in Augustine Eguavoen and its, skills as a technician of the game. So what happens is what happens on the field of play,
yes.
Not necessarily an individual. Another important thing that I think will happen today is Sierra Leone taking on the title holders, Algeria. Yeah. Sierra Leone is there for the first time in about 26 years.
Yeah,
the last time they were in AFCON was 1996. And I like the spirit of their coach. He's saying, well, it doesn't matter whether we crash out of the group stage or whatever. What is important is that we're here, and that they are participating. And I think that's the spirit in the long run. As for Djokovic, yes, his family has been celebrating on the streets of Belgrade. His father says, in fact, this is the biggest victory he has recorded in his career. And that is a rule of law that has won. He himself is upbeat. He says, well, he's there to compete and win, and he's excited to be part of the tournament. But see, the statement by the ATP is what I find more instructive. The ATP in his statement has said, look, this is bad, for tennis, more or less echoing what Andy Murray said yesterday, and that even for Australia, it doesn't look quite good. But ATP is now advising, other tennis federations that in the future, they should be very clear about their guidelines, about the processes.
Yes,
because 97 out of 100 top ATP players, taking part in various tournaments are vaccinated. So Djokovic falls within a very small minority. And the challenge that he may face, he may escape with Australia, although the drama is yet from being over. He may escape, but maybe other countries will not allow him. So his father, Dijana Djokovic, saying that this is his biggest victory, may have to moderate, his enthusiasm. So it's not necessarily victory for Serbia or for the Djokovic family or for Djokovic himself.
Or the anti-vaxxer.
There'll be long-term implications, in terms of how he's able to take part in other tournaments. We will probably clarify the rules much earlier and in a more emphatic manner. Finally, what was that drama, between is it Onuachu and Kelechi Iheanacho? Because there was a video going around that whether there was a fight among the two players or was that some kind of a drama, some kind of enthusiasm?
We are hoping that it's nothing out of the ordinary. We're just hoping it's on the surface, but players do have squabbles here and there once in a while, and certainly I hope that the Super Eagles have actually taken note of that and tried to probably look for a way to douse the tensions. And also, these are prima donnas. Kelechi promised Iheanacho earns over £110,000 a week. Onyekuru was looking like a shining light that did not live up to expectation. So certainly everyone, they go into the Super Eagles camp because Kelechi Iheanacho used to be probably younger than all these players up until when he made that move to Manchester City, then Leicester City, and before you knew what was happening, probably he had high shoulders.
I mean, I had a lot to say, but I think I can say because of time, so we need to go. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Okay,
Aaron.
have fun in Cameroon.
I will, certainly will.
Moving on to Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. Things actually looking fairly mixed as far as Asia Pacific's concerned. This morning, there's still concerns about inflation, when the Fed's going to raise interest rates and all the rest of it. So Japan down about 1%. The Japanese market closed in the previous session, as you know, for those holidays yesterday. South Korea's Kospi retraced some kind of losses. China's mainland shares lost their momentum today. Shenzhen down about 0.5%. I was talking yesterday about what is supposed to be a relatively relatively good property company in China, Shimao. The weekend report saying that it's in crisis and so on. Well, it's actually pushed back from that, and it says it's in talks with potential buyers for parts of its group to remove, as it says, indebtedness of it. And Evergrande has actually, staying with the property sector, has moved out of its headquarters into cheaper ones in Shenzhen. Chinese e-commerce giant JD.com. It's following where Amazon went with bricks and mortar properties. It's actually going to challenge it. Robotic shops in Europe, and it does mark a beginning. People are taking this as the beginning of a big challenge against property and territory which Amazon had thought its own. As far as international travel is concerned, the AirAsia CEO says international travel will revert back to where it was fairly soon. I think he says that he's looking at the beginning of the end, the beginning of the end of problems as far as international travel is concerned. He predicted that he hopes borders will start to open again in March. Well, we'll see. Stock futures then, let's have a look at the United States. Flat after the comeback yesterday. Regular trading, NASDAQ was slightly in the green. Again, it's all about the Fed and when they're going to act and all the rest of it. And bond yields keep rising as well. So as soon as bond yields start to do that in expectation of higher interest rates, then equities get slightly less attractive. As far as global companies are concerned, this is an interesting one. Raising $100 billion in the global debt market. What they're actually doing is trying to get there before interest rates start to go up. So they're trying to take advantage of what is relatively cheap money still, again, until those interest rates start to rise. Google is actually lobbying very, very strongly against the big tech taxes, which the EU is undoubtedly going to try to bring in, the Digital Markets Act, that's what it's called in the EU. And they've been lobbying MEPs and officials and so on quite heavily. They've been advertising in the press and so on, but they've been sending targeted social emails as well to people to put their case forward. The EU wants to block a $2 billion merger between Daewoo and Hyundai Shipbuilding. Reason for that being that those two make LNG carriers, which dominate world trade in LNG. And of course, Europe wants to try to mitigate the effect of high LNG prices. And so it feels that in doing that, it'll somehow it'll stop this sort of market domination of these two companies. The last time it tried it was with Tata and Thyssen Steel, that kind of merger as well. And its EU is the world's third largest importer of LNG. As far as the UK is concerned, Prime Minister continues under pressure, not just about parties, but also, I think probably much more importantly, about the cost of living crisis now, which is becoming to hit households there. The Cabinet will be meeting today. They'll be talking about maybe cutting VAT on bills and also maybe a windfall tax on oil and gas companies, despite calls of dismay from that particular sector, as you'd expect. The Chancellor is saying that Rishi Sunak is saying that nothing is ruled out as we speak. And finally, oil prices sank yesterday. The Brent crude down to about $80 a barrel. It's mainly because they're not really sure about where world demand is going to be, and the case of cases of Omicron, how serious again that's going to be. So the usual worries riddling through the oil market this morning. That's the global view.
All right, Michael, two quick questions. Number one, Financial Times had a report this morning that companies have had corporate bond takings, worth over $100 billion for their businesses. Is it that businesses are bullish in the course of 2022 and they're ready to take more risk? If they've been able to raise about $100 billion in corporate bonds, I mean, some people will say that looks exciting, and it's just about 11 days into January. And secondly, let's look at two things. Number one will be about what is happening in China, the property prices. Some scary reports still coming out there. Other sectors will be affected. And Google trying to muscle, government of nations with what is happening as regard to new tech rules out of Europe.
Okay, so where would you like to start? Should we start with the story I was telling you earlier on about companies? Basically, they're going for cheap cash. I mean, yes, as far as the UK is concerned, I don't know what the thought is globally, but in the UK, people are looking relatively optimistic, or companies are looking relatively optimistically into 2022. I think what's happening here, as I was trying to point out in my report, is that the 100 billion is regarded as getting in with the cheap money whilst it lasts before interest rates start to rise. I don't know what that says. I think it says that, you know, they're going for safety, and of course all companies, or all growing companies which have angry stockholders behind them, or restive stockholders behind them, as most companies do, wish to expand. So I think that's where the 100 billion is coming from. As far as China's concerned, I mean, I just point out what's happening. Evergrande appears to have moved its head office from one to another to try to make things slightly cheaper. Shimao, which I was telling you about again earlier, under pressure, according to reports yesterday. Now it's saying actually they're going to sell off parts of it to reduce its debt. So I think what we're seeing is a mixture of corporate concern about it. Certainly investors are concerned, but also this bigger question is what the government are doing behind the scenes to try to engineer an orderly collapse of the companies. And yes, Google is up there now. It's fighting against tech taxes which are going to come in. I suspect they probably will come in. But what they're doing is, as I said, they're lobbying what they imagine to be opinion makers ahead of the European Union's or the European Commission's decision about these taxes. I think that big tech's going to come under this kind of pressure all the way through the year. And there's just one indication that Google are trying to get ahead of the game. Whether people will listen to what they have to say, well, that's another matter altogether.
Michael, quickly, I would like you to comment on Jerome Powell. He's appearing before the Senate Banking Committee today. There is no fear about him getting confirmed at all. But the big issue is about the key issues. One, about unemployment rate, where from the December meeting, the minutes indicate that the unemployment rate went down to about 3.9%. A year earlier, it was 6.7%. Wages are rising. Okay, but inflation is a big elephant in the room. And he has been given some assurances ahead of the Senate confirmation hearing about inflation. But the fear is that, look, in 2022, we're likely to witness accelerated rising rates within the economy. And that this could have very serious implications, as I pointed out yesterday, not just for the global economy, but also for the U.S. economy. Are the fears misplaced? Or, you know, the U.S. can also afford to be as optimistic as the Europeans are with regard to inflation?
Well, Jerome Powell will be saying, do we actually listen to what he says anymore? I think we do. I think what we do is we guess that there are going to be 3, or indeed, if you believe Goldman Sachs' report yesterday, 4 interest rate rises in the United States over the coming year. I think they'll be fairly gradual ones. I don't really. I mean, what would you, if you were sitting there as a senator, what would you be asking Jerome Powell? Are you going to raise interest rates? Yes, of course I am. I've already indicated that. Are you worried about inflation? Yes, I am. I think the crucial question is why and when did the Fed actually change tack? It was almost a U-turn, wasn't it, towards the end of last year, when suddenly they started worrying about inflation, which, you know, most of us have actually seen coming for a long time. As far as employment's concerned, I think that the United States is sort of getting there. Wage rises are increasing. I think the crucial question about it is, where are the new jobs coming from, and what of those jobs will be latched onto these big infrastructure plans that the United States has? If I were a developing economy, I'd be very worried indeed about what the Fed's going to do, because no question, money is going to get more expensive, risk is going to get more expensive, and emerging nations, by their very nature, are risky. And so therefore, they're going to have to be paying a lot more for their debt. And let's not even get to renegotiation with China and the rest of it. We'll probably save that for another day, because that's we talked about Sri Lanka briefly yesterday. That really is going to be a big debate, I think, certainly in Africa in 2022 already. I have it down here that the Chinese are looking very, very seriously at some of the loans they've made. Look at Uganda, for example, modernization to the Entebbe airport. People are actually saying, or the minister in charge of this said to his parliament yesterday, I'm sorry about the terms of this, but the Chinese said at the time, take it or leave it. I think that's going to be a big, big story in 2022.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Now, our dependable Rotis Odiri is here to give us an African business update. Morning, Rotis.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. Yeah, we begin with the IMF in its latest blog post, essentially warning emerging markets that the Federal Reserve rate hikes could have adverse consequences for their economies based on their debt structure, based on their fiscal structures, vulnerabilities, and so on and so forth. So just in simple terms, as you've seen in what's been happening in the United States, I mean, the doctor just asked Michael Wilson about Jerome Powell's upcoming testimony. They're going to ask him about inflation. We've seen what happened with COVID in the United States and the impact on the U.S. economy. As a result of that, the United States has doled out stimulus measures to the tune of trillions of dollars that are supposed to essentially bridge aggregate demand and boost the economy. As a result of all the spending that's been taking place, and it's not just the United States that's doing this, Europe, everywhere else, when you put all that money into your economy, you're causing demand pull inflation. You're putting lots of stimulus checks in people's hands. So they now go out and spend a lot of money, and they end up pushing up inflation. Inflation in the United States, in UK, in Europe, they're at decade highs. So, from a monetary policy perspective, what do you do when inflation is rising? You've got to, raise rates to combat that. And since the United States is essentially, the leader essentially that sets the rate targets for other central banks across the world, the IMF is saying that, look, you in emerging markets have to be conversant of the United States raising these interest rates. Because what happens is when the United States raises rates, if you are a fund manager that is putting money across the world, you're going to look at your portfolio and say, well, if the United States is raising rates, I'm going to get a higher return on my US dollar investments. And so what will happen is portfolio reallocation, where you now take money away from what you've invested in other emerging markets, pull it out, and then take it over to the United States to take advantage of those rate hikes. So what that happens is you've got capital flows that are moving from your emerging markets over to developed markets to the United States to take advantage of those rate hikes. And what that means then is that if you look at Nigeria's capital importation numbers, FDI, so on and so forth, there's an adverse impact because that means that Forex is coming out of your economy and going elsewhere. Now, the solutions that they put forward for emerging markets, well, they said they need to probably depreciate their currencies and also raise their benchmark interest rates. To give you an example, let's look at Ghana, for example. Ghana's rate sheets, if you look here, inflation, if you look to the left of your screen, current, previous change, just look at current. Inflation in Ghana is 12.2%. Their monetary policy rate is 14.5%. If you go all the way to the bottom, a 364-day treasury bill in Ghana is 16.64%. So that's pretty healthy. Now, Ghana has a thing about letting foreigners into their treasury bills. I think you got to be a citizen or something like that. But as far as the rates you're looking at, if I'm a fund manager and the US is raising rates, I'm going to look at Ghana here and say, okay, positive real rates of return, T-bills has a positive rate, maybe I'll keep my money here. But depending on what they get from the United States, they're going to pull that out. So what does Ghana do? Monetary policy rate is at 14.5. Inflation is at 12. They're in a good place. There's probably no need to raise rates. But depending on how the rate hikes impact them, they might have to adjust. In Nigeria, if you look at Nigeria, this is on the central bank website, inflation is at 15.4%. Monetary policy rate is at 11.5%. And a 364-day T-bill in Nigeria is about 5 or 6%. It's in single digits. So you've got a negative real rate of return on this end. And in this case, you have to make a decision based on what factors you're looking at. So these are the type of things that decision. The Monetary Policy Committee in Nigeria will be meeting, I believe, later on this month. Nothing's happened yet, but this is just the International Monetary Fund saying, hey, listen, have some foresight. This is what could happen later on. And they did say that each particular emerging market has to adjust based on their own reality. So you can see different rates in Ghana from different rates in Nigeria. Angola, South Africa, Brazil, all these other markets across the world, every central bank is going to have to make their own decisions depending on how capital flows move in and out. We still move to Nigeria now. The Alaoji power plant in Abia State, the Niger Delta Power Holding Company has made an announcement that a gas pipeline belonging to Total Energies has been vandalized. So Total wrote a letter to the NDPHC informing them that it had been vandalized, that there was a pipeline supplying gas that's been vandalized, so they declared a force majeure. Remember, just yesterday, I was talking about the fact that oil theft is still a problem in Nigeria. Estimated $3.5 billion worth of oil lost to theft and vandalism. And here you are, you've got another situation here. So this again ties back to security, aging in infrastructure, security, oversight, and what can be done. It's just, incredible that 24 hours after that report, we've got another issue of a gas pipeline being vandalized in Abia State, belonging to Total Energies. To banking, still in Nigeria, Standard Chartered is apparently, according to a document seen by Bloomberg, they're saying that Standard Chartered is looking to reduce its number of branches that it has in Nigeria by about 50%. They are attributing this to competition from fintech companies, mobile money companies, and the fact that there's more competition in the space, and they are just not. They don't see, again, according to the document that was seen, anonymous sources and so on and so forth, that they are not seeing the sense, essentially, in investing further in physical branches and going more digital. So this is a digital strategy on the bank's part. There's still, of course, the whole idea of the rural areas, how you get services over there. They're looking at more agency banking in order to get that done. Finally, Angola, moving out of Nigeria to Angola, there's been protests and strikes, taxi strikes in Angola, in the capital Luanda. About 3 tax associations. You're seeing footage here. So some of these things got a bit violent, where some buses were destroyed and so on and so forth. The gist here is that the taxi associations, about 3 of them, are protesting harassment by police, protesting the bad roads and a number of things, and also COVID restrictions. I think it's really the COVID restrictions that are impacting them, where they've had to reduce the capacity and the number of people that they carry in their taxis. They're saying it's impacting on their revenues, and so they've been striking. Now, I will say this. The associations did put out a statement saying that the people who are causing violence are not from their bloc, and so they've tried to dissociate themselves from that. But COVID restrictions still very much an issue there in one of Africa's largest oil producers.
Well, thank you so much.
No time to comment, although you said that when inflation goes up, you raise interest rate. Yep. Have you heard of the Turkish president? Erdogan?
Very weird guy. Thank you.
Now for an update on the COVID-19 pandemic, Adeswa Omororan is here with us. Good morning, Adeswa.
Good morning, Chundul, lovely in that green, and good morning, Rufai, and Dr. Bati as well. Good morning. Well, thank you. Some of the most important data you have to know and familiarize yourself with since the pandemic began. I keep saying that these are not just figures. These are real people affected, real lives, real businesses affected. But here they are. 310 million infections since the pandemic began, 5.4 million deaths so far. Governments in many countries across the world are struggling to curb the spiraling infections driven by the highly infectious Omicron variant. In the US, a surge in Omicron cases has pushed hospitalizations to an all-time high. More people than ever before are now in hospitals in the US. This is, of course, due to the Omicron. And, of course, we also know that the hospitals are under strain because of staff shortages, and that's in the US. But across Asia, we're also seeing record cases from Malaysia to Thailand to South Korea and even India. Well, globally, almost 9.5 billion doses of vaccines have been administered. Another critical data you need to look at, 9.44, it's about almost 9.5 billion doses administered so far. Speaking of vaccines, 2 pharmaceutical companies yesterday announced that they are stepping up efforts at producing targeted vaccines for Omicron variant, and they are the Pfizer and Moderna company. So they say sometime in this year we should be seeing those vaccines that are targeted against the highly infectious Omicron variant. Let's take a quick look at the data here in Nigeria, shall we? In the last 24 hours, 420 new cases, and unfortunately, 8 COVID-19 related deaths were reported in Nigeria from 12 states. No new vaccination data released in the last 24 hours by the NPHCDA. However, it continues in its latest rankings of the top 5 performing governors and their states towards vaccinating 50% of their eligible population. Well, it says Jigawa has now joined Nasarawa to vaccinate 50%, over 50% of its eligible population. So kudos to those 2 states. Those making the other top 5 positions are Ogun, Oyo, Zamfara states. And of course, they come into that position with 16. Beg your pardon, Ogun has 19%, Oyo has 16.5%, and Zamfara has 16% in that order. Meanwhile, the NPHCDA says Anambra and Enugu State, both from the southeast region of Nigeria, have now moved from being the worst performing states to the 29th and 31st positions on the latest rankings. Well, more vaccines are arriving in Nigeria. We are having a situation where supply is outweighing the demand at this time. People need to go out and get their jab. Greece is the latest country to donate vaccines to Nigeria. About 1 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine were donated to the country. And of course, this was made known yesterday in the nation's capital by the head of the delegation tonight. Nigeria, the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Greece. His name is Nicholas Dendias. They were received by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyema. Now, we spoke about this last week, but here's an update. Keeping to its promise, the government of Uganda has finally reopened schools, ending the world's longest. The world's longest. You need to let that sink in. The world's longest school disruption due to COVID-19 pandemic. 2 years the children were out of school. Well, yesterday, schools flung the gates open for them to return. And of course, the videos made the rounds across the world yesterday. Scientists are divided over an alleged hybrid mutation identified in Cyprus, a combination of the Delta and Omicron variant dubbed Deltacron. While some scientists believe this was likely caused by a lab contamination and not a worrying variant, well, the scientist who says he first discovered this in Cyprus says his results are very accurate and not an error, no lab contamination. He said the strain did not emerge from that contamination, or it's not a single combination, he says, but as a result of evolutionary pressure. And finally, you spoke about this earlier. Boris Johnson, of course, on Monday night again was accused of utterly outrageous breach of lockdown rules as a leaked email. This was first leaked by Dominic Cummings, who is now his arch enemy, if you like to say. It was a party of bring your own booze, and 100 people were invited, but 30 to 40 showed up. It was at a time where Britons were told they could not meet with one other person outside. And here you had over 30 people gathering with the Prime Minister and his wife in attendance. Back to you guys.
And now we see why he was so protective of Dominic Cummings, because shortly after that, in the same week, was that whole scandal about Dominic Cummings breaking lockdown to go up north to Durham. And the Prime Minister, and generally just the Downing Street staff, were really protective of Dominic Cummings. I guess they knew why. But it's so sad that it's actually now, the police is now going to wade into this and investigate it. The police had obviously had reports before of that other Christmas party scandal. But at this point, they have no choice because there's actually a paper trail. They have emails. I mean, Dominic Cummings, hell hath no fury like that man. He's really something else. About Deltacron, I'd read about Flurona, this sort of combination of getting the flu and COVID, which it sounded ghastly, and now we have Deltacron. Yeah. I mean, does this ever end? Can this just be over? I'm just quite stressed. And Uganda, just very quickly, I'm really glad the kids are back. And I'm horrified that it took 2 years to get them back. And sometimes I complain a lot. I feel like I sit on this show complaining constantly, but we have to be thankful that what we had to contend with in Nigeria, we're all up in arms when history was removed from the syllabus. And look at what Uganda's government did to the children. 2 years is far too long. I hope they can catch up, all of them. And I hope all the children do return to school because, you know, the longer they stay out of school, the harder it is to get them back incorporated into the education system.
Well, not all the children are returning to school. The head of UNICEF Uganda has said that about a third of the students' population in Uganda will not be returning. You know, what President Museveni announced a few weeks ago was a phased reopening of schools. The schools were all first shut down in March 2020. And now that they're coming back, some of the girls, we're told, have taken to early pregnancy. Some of the, students that will have returned, they are now working for their parents in a country where there is a lot of poverty and also there is a lot of illiteracy. And the concern is that the damage will be big. That because the closure was too long and it has turned out to be too costly. And yet, a whole future generation has been turned adrift because of COVID-19. Uganda has, one of the youngest populations, youthful populations in the world. 153,000 case positivity with COVID and about 33,000 deaths. But the education authorities are optimistic that they will be able to manage the situation and at least rescue the ones that will return to school. As for Delta Cron, well, yes, Kostrikis, that's the name of the professor at the University of Cyprus, is insisting that, look, he's very certain about his research and that, this genome sequencing was not just done in Cyprus, it was also done with samples from Israel, and that this is something that the scientists should take seriously. But of course, other scientists are saying this is a case of recombination. And he has a different opinion. But in this kind of situation, the best thing perhaps to do is to investigate. In the UK, yes, the Partygate scandal of May 15, May 20, 2020, and also of December 15, 17 in 2020 is beginning to haunt the Prime Minister. And the police are already investigating some members of the Cabinet Office. And the sense of outrage is simply that, look, rules are rules. You cannot have two sets of rules for people in government, for the elite, and a different set of rules for the people. And what makes this really scandalous is that, look, the party that is being referred to of May 20, 2020, in the email sent out by Martin Reynolds, and a top aide to the Prime Minister. This was just 30 minutes after Oliver Dowden, who was a culture secretary at the time, had given an instruction that, you can only meet with one person in a public place, and yet, they were sending out invitations to 100 persons to come and down it at Downing Street.
They didn't
they were downing booze.
They were not jollificating Downing Street.
They were okay. Boris Johnson, you better leave. Go.
Well, that's what the British do.
Anyway, this is horrible.
Thank you, Adeswa.
Downing booze.